Humanity had always looked up at the stars with wonder but never with expectation. For centuries, scientists sent signals into the void, hoping for a response that never came. Until one day, everything changed. The message arrived without warning. A simple pattern repeated across multiple frequencies, an undeniable sign of intelligence. The world stopped. Nations united. Experts worked tirelessly to decode it. Within weeks, they found a message embedded within the pattern coordinates and a phrase in perfect English: "We are coming." No one knew what to expect. Fear and excitement gripped humanity. Governments scrambled to prepare. Military forces stood on high alert while scientists urged diplomacy. Conspiracies spread like wildfire. Some believed it was a hoax. Others feared an invasion. The world watched as a single spacecraft appeared at the edge of the solar system, moving with precision beyond human capability. It slowed near Mars, then adjusted its course directly toward Earth. The vessel was unlike anything seen before. A sleek construct of unknown metal reflecting no light yet visible from orbit. No weapons, no threats, only silent approach. Humanity held its breath. The ship stopped just beyond the moon, hovering as if waiting. Then another message came. A single transmission broadcast globally: "We request permission to land." Debate erupted across the planet. Some demanded immediate refusal, fearing extinction. Others argued that rejecting them could be seen as hostility. After days of intense discussion, the United Nations voted. The response was sent, permission granted. The world turned its eyes to a remote desert location chosen for its isolation. Military forces surrounded the area, prepared for any threat. Scientists and diplomats stood ready. The sky darkened. The ship descended without sound or flame. It touched the ground with impossible grace. Minutes passed. No movement. Cameras captured every detail as the surface of the ship shimmered, then melted away, revealing an opening. A figure emerged. Humanoid but different. Tall, slender, with elongated limbs and luminous eyes. It moved with deliberate grace, stopping at the edge of the ramp. A second figure followed. Then a third. The world held its breath. The first being raised a hand, a universal gesture of peace. A voice resonated not from their mouths but directly into the minds of those present. "We greet you in peace. We have watched you for a long time. We are here to offer knowledge." The word sent shockwaves through humanity. Every government, every leader, every scientist struggled to comprehend the weight of what had just happened. These beings were not conquerors, not invaders, but observers. They had been watching, studying, waiting for the right moment. A single human stepped forward. Dr. Elias Carter, a leading astrophysicist chosen to represent Earth. He met their gaze, feeling an unfamiliar sensation, as if his thoughts were being gently examined. He spoke, his voice steady despite the enormity of the moment. "Who are you? Why have you waited until now?" The tallest of the beings inclined its head. "We are the Varelians. Our purpose is to uplift civilizations when they are ready. You were not ready before. But now you stand at the threshold." The word sent ripples through humanity. Ready for what? Were these beings truly benevolent, or was there a deeper motive? Carter chose his next words carefully. "How do you determine readiness?" The Varelian responded without hesitation. "When a species reaches a level of understanding beyond war, beyond self-destruction. When unity is possible and curiosity outweighs fear. You are close. Closer than you realize. But you must prove it." The challenge was set. Prove that humanity was ready. The world erupted in debate. Some saw it as a test, a chance to evolve beyond the limitations that had plagued civilization for centuries. Others saw it as manipulation. Why should an alien species determine humanity's fate? Who were they to judge? Tensions rose. Governments feared losing control. Religious groups called it an affront to human destiny. But among the chaos, a silent revolution began. Scientists, engineers, thinkers of all kinds united under a single goal: to show the Varelians that humanity was worthy. Carter and a team of the world's brightest minds met with the Varelians daily, exchanging knowledge, learning their ways. They discovered technology beyond imagination. Energy sources that could end scarcity. Medical advancements that could eliminate disease. But the Varelians offered nothing freely. Every piece of knowledge required proof that humanity could wield it responsibly. Days turned to weeks. The world watched as progress and conflict grew side by side. Some embraced the opportunity. Others sought to control it. And beneath it all, a question lingered unspoken. What if humanity failed the test? The Varelians watched. Waiting. The Varelians observed humanity's struggles with a patience that was both unsettling and profound. They did not interfere, nor did they offer guidance. They only watched, waiting for humanity to decide its own path. The debates grew more intense. Some leaders saw the challenge as an opportunity, pushing for worldwide cooperation. Others saw it as a threat, believing the Varelians were manipulating humanity for their own purposes. Military factions whispered of preemptive strikes. Religious groups called it a deception. Protests erupted across the world, demanding answers. What did the Varelians truly want? Dr. Elias Carter and his team met with the Varelians daily, exchanging knowledge and philosophies. The aliens were not omnipotent, nor did they claim to be. They had their own history, their own trials, their own failures. They had once been like humanity, divided, destructive, uncertain. But they had found a way forward. Their knowledge had not come from domination, but from unity. Carter was fascinated. Every conversation with the Varelians revealed something new. Their technology defied human understanding, yet it was not used for conquest. Their minds were sharp, yet they held no contempt for less advanced species. But one thing remained clear: they would not simply hand over their secrets. Humanity had to prove itself. The first test was simple in concept but nearly impossible in execution. The Varelians presented a device, a small, shimmering sphere that contained the blueprint for limitless clean energy. But it was locked. The key was not a password or a code, it was cooperation. The knowledge within could only be unlocked if the world's governments came together to build it, openly and without secrecy. It was a brilliant test, one that exposed humanity's deepest flaws. Nations hesitated. No one wanted to share power. No one wanted their enemies to have access to such technology. Some even proposed stealing the device, dissecting it, trying to bypass the challenge. The Varelians merely watched. Carter fought desperately to unite the world's leaders. He argued, he pleaded, he reasoned. Some listened. Others laughed in his face. He stood before the United Nations, before world powers, before military leaders, and asked the one question that would define humanity's future. Is our fear of each other greater than our desire to move forward? The words echoed across the world. People listened. The debate shifted. Citizens demanded cooperation. Protests turned into movements. A fragile alliance formed. The first steps were taken. The best minds from every nation came together, working not for profit, not for power, but for the future of their species. The Varelians observed in silence. Months passed. The energy device was built. Nations put aside their differences, not completely, not perfectly, but enough. When the final piece was in place, the device activated. Limitless power. Clean, infinite energy. A future without scarcity. Humanity had done it. The Varelians acknowledged the achievement, but there was no celebration, no reward. Instead, they asked a single question. What will you do with it? The test was not just about building the device. It was about what came next. Would humanity use this power to uplift itself, or to destroy? The world stood at another crossroads. Governments debated who would control the technology. Corporations sought ways to profit. The military eyed its potential for war. And in the shadows, a group of dissidents saw only danger. They did not trust the Varelians. They did not trust their own leaders. They believed that by accepting the test, humanity had already surrendered. And so, on the night of the device's global activation, disaster struck. An explosion. Fire. Sabotage. The device was destroyed. The world watched in horror as flames consumed years of work. Accusations flew. Nations blamed one another. Trust shattered. The dream of unity crumbled. And the Varelians watched. Dr. Carter stood among the ruins, the weight of failure crushing him. He turned to the Varelians, desperate for another chance. Please. We can fix this. We can do better. The tallest of the Varelians regarded him with an expression Carter could not decipher. We will see. And for the first time since their arrival, the Varelians took a step back. The world spiraled into chaos. The destruction of the device sent shockwaves through every nation, every institution, every person who had dared to hope. Trust collapsed overnight. Governments accused one another of sabotage. Conspiracy theories ran rampant. Some believed it was a rival nation. Others blamed corporations that stood to lose everything if free energy became reality. A few even suspected the Varelians themselves, whispering that the aliens had never intended to share their knowledge, that the entire test had been a setup. Dr. Elias Carter stood among the ruins, his heart heavy with despair. He had fought so hard, believed so deeply that humanity could rise to the challenge. And now, everything was in ashes. The Varelians remained silent, their luminous eyes watching the unfolding events with unreadable expressions. Carter turned to them, desperate for guidance, for anything that could salvage what remained. Tell me what happens now, he pleaded. The tallest of the Varelians, the one Carter had come to know as their leader, studied him for a long moment before speaking. That depends on you. Their response sent a ripple through Carter's mind. They had not abandoned the test. Humanity was still being judged. But the parameters had changed. The challenge was no longer about building something, it was about what humanity would do in the face of its own failure. Would they turn on each other? Would they descend into war? Or would they find a way to rise once again? The world stood at a crossroads. And the Varelians were waiting for their answer. Carter wasted no time. He gathered the remaining scientists, engineers, and diplomats who still believed in the vision of unity. They worked tirelessly to uncover the truth behind the sabotage. Clues emerged. A secretive faction operating in the shadows. A group that believed humanity should reject alien influence at any cost. Their motive was clear, they feared that cooperation with the Varelians would make humanity weak, dependent. They saw the test not as an opportunity, but as a threat to human independence. News of the group spread quickly, igniting fierce debate. Some called them terrorists. Others saw them as heroes. Nations fractured even further, divided between those who wanted to continue the test and those who believed the Varelians should be forced off Earth. And then, something unexpected happened. The Varelians, who had remained passive observers until now, made their first true demand. The ones responsible must face justice. The words echoed across the world. For the first time, the Varelians had issued a requirement. They would not provide more knowledge, would not continue the test, until those who had destroyed the device were held accountable. The world hesitated. Some governments were eager to comply, desperate to regain the Varelians' favor. Others resisted, fearing what it would mean to let an alien race dictate human law. Protests erupted. Some called for the traitors to be executed. Others demanded their freedom. The line between justice and vengeance blurred. Carter stood in the middle of it all, trying to hold the fragile alliances together. He understood the stakes. If humanity failed this test, if they turned this into another war, the Varelians would leave. And they would take their knowledge with them. The group responsible for the sabotage was found. They did not deny their actions. They stood before the world, unrepentant. One of them, a man named Jonas Rourke, spoke directly to the cameras broadcasting across the planet. We did what had to be done. You think these aliens are here to help us? No. They're testing us like we're lab rats. They don't respect us. They don't trust us. And you're all so eager to bow before them. We destroyed the device because we refused to let them decide our future. The word struck deep. He wasn't entirely wrong. The Varelians were testing humanity. They were judging them. And now, humanity had to decide what that meant. The world held its breath as the trial began. Would they choose justice? Would they choose vengeance? Or would they prove, once and for all, that they were more than what the Varelians believed? The decision would change everything. The trial of Jonas Rourke and his followers became the most watched event in human history. Every nation, every citizen, every leader had a stake in its outcome. It was not just about the destruction of the device anymore. It was about what kind of civilization humanity wanted to become. The Varelians remained silent, watching but offering no interference. Their presence alone was enough to remind humanity that this was still part of the test. They had made one demand, justice. But they had not defined what justice meant. That decision was humanity's alone. The world was divided. Some demanded the harshest punishment, believing that anything less would prove humanity was incapable of unity. Others feared that executing or imprisoning Rourke's group would confirm his beliefs, that humanity had already surrendered its independence to the Varelians. Dr. Elias Carter sat in the courtroom, watching the proceedings with growing unease. He had spent his life believing in the potential of humanity, but now, for the first time, he wasn't sure if they would make the right choice. The arguments raged. Some saw Rourke as a terrorist. Others saw him as a necessary voice of resistance. And then Rourke himself spoke. He stood, facing the cameras, addressing the entire planet. His voice was calm, steady. You all think this is about energy? About progress? It's not. This is about control. The Varelians aren't our saviors. They're our judges. They came here, not to help us, but to determine if we're worthy. Who gave them that right? Who decided they get to stand above us and dictate our future? I won't apologize for what I did. I would do it again. Because humanity doesn't need to pass their test. We need to pass our own. The speech sent shockwaves across the world. Even Carter felt the weight of Rourke's words. Was he wrong? Or had he simply voiced the fear that so many had been too afraid to admit? The verdict came after days of deliberation. Rourke and his group were sentenced, not to death, not to imprisonment, but to exile. They would be sent to a remote, self-sustaining colony on Mars, cut off from Earth but allowed to live. It was a compromise, a decision that neither side was fully satisfied with, but one that upheld the idea that humanity could be just without being cruel. The Varelians finally reacted. They did not celebrate. They did not condemn. They simply acknowledged the decision. The test continues. The word sent a wave of relief and frustration across the world. Some had hoped for final judgment, either acceptance or rejection. But the Varelians were not done. There was still more to prove. The world moved forward. The destruction of the device had been a setback, but it had also forced humanity to confront itself. Nations hesitated, but they did not abandon the pursuit of progress. Scientists worked to rebuild, to recreate what had been lost, not with alien guidance, but with human ingenuity. And then, just as things began to settle, the Varelians revealed the next phase of the test. They provided new coordinates, this time, not on Earth, but in deep space. A final challenge, they said. A choice that will define your place among the stars. Humanity had thought the test was about technology, about cooperation. But now, it seemed, the true test had only just begun. The coordinates given by the Varelians pointed to a region of deep space beyond the furthest human exploration. A place where no known signals had ever been detected, where no probes had ever returned. It was a void in every sense, silent, empty, unknown. The challenge was clear: humanity had to send a mission. Not just a probe, but a crewed vessel. A journey into the unknown, without guidance, without assurance of safety. The world hesitated. The stakes were higher than ever. Sending a ship into uncharted space, beyond any established routes, carried immense risks. What if it was a trap? What if the Varelians were testing humanity's willingness to sacrifice their own? What if whatever lay beyond was something even they feared? But the alternative was worse. Refusing the challenge would be an admission of fear, a declaration that humanity was not ready to take its place among the stars. Despite the debates, despite the doubts, the mission was approved. The ship, the Endeavour was constructed in record time. It was the most advanced vessel humanity had ever built, a symbol of cooperation between nations. But even with the best minds working together, it was still an uncertain venture. The crew would be heading into the abyss with no promise of return. Dr. Elias Carter, despite his protests, was selected as part of the team. His experience with the Varelians, his understanding of their philosophy, made him essential. Alongside him, a hand-picked crew of scientists, engineers, and explorers. Each one chosen not just for their expertise, but for their ability to face the unknown. The launch was watched by billions. The world held its breath as the Endeavour left orbit, accelerating toward the coordinates that could decide humanity's fate. The Varelians did not intervene. They simply watched. Days passed. Then weeks. The crew adapted to the silence of deep space, their minds weighed down by the uncertainty of what they would find. The tension was constant, the fear unspoken. The further they traveled, the more they realized how truly alone they were. And then, as they approached the given coordinates, their sensors picked up something. A structure. It was ancient, massive, drifting in the void. Unlike anything seen before. Not Varelian. Not human. Something else. Something older. The crew stared in disbelief. This was not just an exploration mission. It was a discovery that could rewrite everything humanity knew about the universe. Carter felt a deep unease. The Varelians had sent them here for a reason. But what were they meant to find? The ship moved closer. Lights flickered along the surface of the structure. A signal pulsed, faint but deliberate. An invitation. Or a warning. The crew of the Endeavour stood in silent awe as the ancient structure loomed before them. It was massive, far larger than any human-built station, its surface dark and worn with time. Scans revealed strange energy readings, but no clear signs of life. It had been abandoned, perhaps for centuries, perhaps for millennia. Dr. Elias Carter felt the weight of history pressing down on him. The Varelians had sent them here for a reason. But why? The signal pulsed again, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. Someone, or something, had left it waiting. After a tense discussion, the crew decided to board. A small team, heavily equipped, made their way into the airlock. As the doors opened, a strange stillness filled the air. No signs of movement. No signs of decay. The interior was pristine, untouched by time. And then the doors sealed behind them. A deep hum filled the halls. Lights flickered to life, illuminating corridors covered in symbols unknown to any species. The ship was waking up. Carter's heart pounded. This was no derelict ruin. It was a waiting machine. A screen lit up, displaying a message in a language that none of them recognized. But before anyone could react, their translators struggled to make sense of it. Then, slowly, a phrase emerged in clear human script. You were not the first. You will not be the last, ***. The word sent a chill through the team. What does that mean? One of the crew whispered. Carter's mind raced. The Varelians had framed this as a test. But now, it felt like something far bigger. Something beyond their understanding. And then another message appeared. Prepare. The cycle begins again, ***. Suddenly, the ship trembled. Systems activated all at once. Something was waking up, something vast, something powerful. Alarms blared on the Endeavour, the crew on board shouted warnings. Energy levels in the structure were rising. Something was coming online. Carter turned to the message, realization dawning. This was no mere test. This was a warning. And humanity had just triggered it. The structure came to life with an eerie precision. Walls shifted, revealing intricate machinery that had been dormant for untold millennia. Lights pulsed in a rhythmic sequence, as if something vast and ancient was awakening from its slumber. Dr. Elias Carter barely had time to process what was happening before the ship's comms crackled to life. "Carter. We're detecting massive energy spikes. Something is." The message cut off as a wave of energy surged through the structure. The crew braced themselves, expecting an attack. But instead, a massive holographic display filled the chamber. It showed a star map, but not of any known region. Planets, celestial bodies, vast structures, places that had never been recorded by any species. And then, one by one, those places disappeared. Not naturally. Not over time. They were consumed. Something had erased them. A final set of words appeared before them. "They come. They always come. Prepare, ****. Carter's breath caught in his throat. This wasn't just a warning. It was a message from a long-dead civilization. A record of extinction. And then, the final realization struck him. This wasn't a test from the Varelians. This was the truth the Varelians had already discovered. A deep, resonant hum filled the structure as hidden mechanisms activated. The entire ship shuddered as something unseen in the depths of space responded to the awakening signal. The Varelians had sent humanity here to face this moment, to see with their own eyes that the universe was not just a place of exploration. It was a battlefield. Carter turned to the team. "We have to leave. Now." The crew didn't hesitate. They sprinted back toward the docking point, but just as they reached the airlock, their comms crackled again. "The Varelians. You have seen. Now you understand." The Endeavor detached from the structure as it continued to power up, sending unknown signals into the void. The crew didn't wait to find out what would answer. They accelerated away, pushing their engines to the limit, desperate to escape whatever had just been set into motion. As they left the region, Carter knew that humanity had been changed forever. The Varelians hadn't come to test them. They had come to warn them. Because something was out there. And now, it knew humanity existed.